What's up guys, my name is Javier and welcome back to Tool Craze. In today's episode we're going to do something a little bit different and mix it up from the usual tool reviews. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you guys how to set up your very own surveillance system. Now before I show you guys how to set up the surveillance system, we're going to talk about why we need a surveillance system, then the key components that make up a surveillance system, and then lastly I'm going to show you guys how to install the surveillance system yourselves. I understand this video is going to be a bit long, so if you want to jump straight into a certain topic, then you're more than welcome to do so. So if you don't want to hear why we need a surveillance system, you can jump straight into the section on the key components that make up a surveillance system. And if you already know what makes up a surveillance system, you can jump into the last section on how to install the system yourself. So the big question is, why do we need a surveillance system? Many of you guys may live in a nice neighborhood or even in an area that seems to be pretty safe. But there are plenty of things that can happen around you, such as theft, vandalism, and even crime. It's not about being paranoid, but plenty of things can happen around you, right here in your home, in your backyard, and even in the workplace. And with today's modern internet age, more and more people are making purchases online, and of course those packages have to be delivered. And all too often, I keep seeing reports on the news of people's packages being stolen right in front of their front door. So those are perfect examples of why we need some sort of surveillance system. If something ever happens, like a break-in, property damage, or even crime, you'll be able to see exactly what happened and who it was that did it. You'll have undeniable proof you can use to bring to the police and the insurance companies to file a claim. So now you know why you need a surveillance system. But many people out there seem to think that you either need to pay a monthly fee for surveillance or that home systems are too expensive. While both of those are true, another truth is that there are plenty of inexpensive options out there to get you started with absolutely no monthly fees for each and every month. I've seen plenty of systems running 4 channels in the ballpark of around $200 to $300, which makes them fairly inexpensive. Of course, these systems don't typically include monitors, but a separate monitor can be had for very cheap or even free. I'll talk more about that in a bit. A surveillance system does require an upfront cost, which is the price of the surveillance system itself, but installing it yourself will save you lots of money on labor and lots of money in the long run when compared to monthly fees and contracts with a security company. The main component of a surveillance system are the cameras, and most cameras today are daytime nighttime cameras. What this means is that they have built-in night vision so they can see what's going on at nighttime. To get their night vision, they use an array of LEDs that blast out infrared light, a wavelength we can't see with our eyes, but cameras have no problem picking up infrared light. These cameras also have built-in light sensors that turn the LEDs off during the day and light up the LEDs as soon as it gets dark. Daytime nighttime cameras are very inexpensive and they're very common nowadays, and most complete systems include cameras that can operate at nighttime. In the security system world, there are 2 types of cameras. You have analog cameras and IP cameras, or also known as network cameras. Although both camera types are digital, because they both use digital sensors, analog cameras output with an analog signal. These use cables called BNC cables, which are exactly the same type of cable used by electronic devices before TVs went all digital, such as this old RCA cable. Essentially, it's the same type of cable, except for the ends are a bit different and are made so the connection can lock on and can't be easily removed. You can also buy adapters such as this one and hook up one of these cameras directly to your TV using the good old yellow RCA cable. And on the other hand, an IP camera, or otherwise known as a network camera, outputs its signal digitally and can only be picked up and connected to a computer network, hence the name network camera. So if you have a computer network at home, you're already ready to use any IP camera. And most IP cameras use wired connections using standard Cat5 network cable, which is exactly the same network cabling used in your home or office network, and can hook up these cameras directly to your router. Some IP cameras also have Wi-Fi built in, so you don't have to physically wire up the camera to your network and can pick up their signal wirelessly using Wi-Fi. When compared side by side, IP cameras in general offer better picture quality overall than analog cameras. Also, many IP cameras come in HD resolutions such as 720p and even 1080p, which is the same resolution as HD TVs. And up until recently, analog cameras didn't come in HD resolutions. But now I've seen analog cameras that now claim to have 720p, and even 1080p HD resolutions. So whether you decide to use analog cameras or IP cameras, they both require the use of a power source with a power cable running up to the camera and a video cable to output the video signal. Here I have an analog camera with a video output and a separate connector for power. You need one cable for power and one cable for video. But most kits nowadays come with a 2-in-1 cable that has both the power and the video feed on one cable. Some cameras also pick up audio, and you'll see a separate audio hookup on the back. And with IP cameras, the video and audio signal runs through the same network cable, so you only need one cable to handle the video feed and the audio feed. IP cameras still require a power source, and most will have two connections on the back, just like the analog cameras, for video and for power. Some IP camera systems have what's called PoE, which stands for Power over Ethernet, and it transfers the video signal and feeds the power to the camera all using the same network cable. This camera here is a Power over Ethernet camera, and notice how only one cable hookup comes out of the camera. In order to take advantage of the Power over Ethernet, you'll need IP cameras with Power over Ethernet, and you'll also need a video recorder with Power over Ethernet to supply each camera with power. There's also adapters to feed Power over Ethernet cables on regular IP cameras, so you can use one cable instead of two. Most cameras are pointed in one direction, such as these cameras. I can point them in any direction when I set them up, but once set up, that's the angle of view you'll be watching from here on out. There are also pan and tilt cameras that do just what their name says, as they can pan and tilt in any direction and are controlled remotely. A lot of stores use these types of cameras to follow suspicious people around in their store. These cameras come in both analog and IP camera varieties. So while cameras are the main component, the heart of a surveillance system is the DVR, which stands for Digital Video Recorder. Many of you guys already own DVRs from your cable or satellite company, so you should be pretty familiar with what they are and what they do, which is to record live video feeds and give you the ability to play back recorded video at any time. DVRs use regular computer hard drives to store video signals coming from any security cameras you have, and you can view anything that gets recorded on the hard drive at any time. You can't use a DVR you already own because that's specifically for your cable TV, but there are plenty of standalone DVRs made specifically for security cameras. The main thing you want to look for in a DVR is how many channels they can record. Each camera feed is one channel, so a 4-camera system would require a 4-channel DVR, and an 8-camera system would require an 8-channel DVR, and so forth. And just like there are 2 types of security cameras, there's also 2 types of DVRs. When you hear the word DVR, it will always refer to a digital video recorder meant only for analog cameras. A DVR for network cameras is called an NVR, which stands for Network Video Recorder. And even though it's called an NVR instead of a DVR, it's still a DVR because it is a digital video recorder. An NVR is built from the ground up to accept only IP cameras, as all of the inputs on the back are for network cables. Because the technology on NVRs are a little bit newer than the DVRs, they're also a bit more expensive. The good thing about an NVR is that you don't need an existing network to run IP cameras, as it provides a network internally to run the IP cameras. And as for the similarities, DVRs and NVRs have outputs so you can connect to regular PC monitors and also for TVs. Also, the vast majority of DVRs and NVRs have additional network capabilities so that they can connect to the internet, and you can even view your cameras anywhere with any computer and even with your smartphone. When I say anywhere, I mean everywhere. In another city, another state, and even another country on any PC and smartphone. This is a great feature to have so you can view your home cameras from work or vice versa, or even when you're away from home, such as a vacation. In order to view your cameras anywhere, you'll need a capable router and internet connection with plenty of bandwidth for uploading the video feed from your DVR and NVR. DVRs and NVRs can be purchased with or without a hard drive installed. And to get the most out of your money, I would suggest you buy a video recorder without a hard drive installed for 2 good reasons. The price difference between a video recorder with and without a hard drive can usually get you a much larger hard drive, usually double or even more than double the hard drive capacity. Also, you don't know the quality of the included hard drive. I would assume it's low quality cheap Chinese junk to keep the manufacturer's costs down. And by buying your own hard drive and installing it yourself, you know exactly what's going into your hard drive and that it's a quality unit that'll last you a long time. As for hard drive options, WD hard drives, also known as Western Digital hard drives, are generally considered the best in terms of reliability and performance, and are a good place to start. Other hard drive options are Seagate hard drives, which are very good hard drives, although they're not highly regarded such as the WD hard drives. But I've installed Seagate hard drives in all of my DVRs, and they've all been running perfectly 24/7 since the year 2012. The next major component to your surveillance system is a monitor, so you can watch live video streams coming from your cameras and also watch recorded video from your video recorder. There's not really anything special about a monitor, as you can use just about any PC monitor with your video recorder, just as long as your monitor has the same connections as your video recorder. And if you want to save a ton of money, you can purchase a used PC monitor at your local thrift store for around $10 or less. And you can also get these for free on Craigslist. They're practically giving these things away on Craigslist. I'm talking about the old school monitors with the big old tube in the back. You can also use a regular TV as a monitor with your DVR or NVR, as long as your DVR or NVR has the same connections as your TV. The next component to the surveillance system is the cabling, which I already went over briefly with each camera type. Either BNC cable that runs an analog signal for analog cameras, or network cable for IP cameras. And along with the camera cables, you're also going to need to purchase cable staples to run the cables along the walls. You can also add extra items to your surveillance system, such as microphones, but there are two things you have to be very careful with if you want to record audio. First of all, you'll need a video recorder that has audio inputs. Not all video recorders have inputs for audio, and those that do don't always have an audio input for each channel. So you need to make sure your video recorder can accept audio. The next thing you want to be aware of if you do decide to record audio are the legalities. Recording audio may seem harmless, but in many states, eavesdropping is considered a serious offense. You can even be charged with a felony. If someone finds out that you're recording their audio without their permission, you can get into some serious trouble. So before you decide to record audio, make sure to look into your local laws. Many times all you have to do is post a sign in your home or in your office saying that the audio is being recorded. But like I said before, make sure to look into your local laws to make sure if you can even do this. All the components of a surveillance system can be purchased separately, but if you want to save some cash, I suggest you purchase everything all together as a complete system. There's plenty of systems out there that include a video recorder, a set of cameras, and a set of camera cables for a much lower price point than if you were to purchase everything separately. And most surveillance systems don't include monitors, so don't forget to pick one up as well. And don't forget to buy cable staples, as these aren't included. And as I was saying earlier, if you do decide to buy a video recorder, make sure to purchase one without a hard drive installed, and purchase one separately, so you can get a much better hard drive for your money. Another bit of advice when choosing a system is to future-proof your system. What I mean by that is I suggest you get a video recorder with more channels than you need right now. For example, let's say you only need 4 channels. I suggest you get an 8-channel system with only 4 cameras. There's plenty of systems out there that have half the amount of cameras included in the system. For example, an 8-channel kit with only 4 cameras, 16-channel kits with only 8 cameras, and so forth. This way, if you ever need an extra camera, you can by simply buying one extra camera instead of having to go out and buy a completely new DVR with more channels. And in the long run, this will probably be more cost effective if you really think about it. So now that you know the main components that make up a surveillance system, I'm going to show you how to install your new surveillance system. In this example, I'm going to install an 8-channel NVR system that includes 8 720p HD IP cameras and an NVR video recorder. Using my own advice, I purchased everything all together as a complete kit that includes a set of cameras, cables, and everything, but without a hard drive installed. I'm actually replacing an older 4-channel analog system here at this office that I installed back in 2012 because the business owner now wants more cameras. So I'll be swapping out the hard drive from the previous DVR to this new NVR. And as for the monitor, we're going to use an old school computer monitor that we already had on hand. So once you have all the items you need, this would be a good time to install your hard drive if you purchase your DVR without a hard drive. You want to start by opening up the top cover of the DVR. It's held by a few screws on the back and a few screws on the sides. You can use a Phillips screwdriver or a powered screwdriver with a number 2 Phillips bit. Once all the screws are removed, you can now remove the top cover. Now with the cover off, make sure not to touch any of the electronics inside your DVR as to not accidentally shock and fry the circuits. Grab your hard drive and connect the two cables inside the DVR to the back of the hard drive. One cable is so the DVR can communicate with the hard drive, and the other cable is to supply the hard drive with power. The connectors are L-shaped, so it's impossible to install them the wrong way. Now that the hard drive is plugged in, we have to mount it to the DVR using a few screws that came with the DVR. Some DVRs have a special bracket for the hard drive, while some simply have 4 holes on the bottom of the DVR to mount the hard drive. And after the hard drive is mounted, it's time to put the top cover back on. At this point, I highly suggest you use a regular screwdriver so you don't over torque and strip the screws, or you can use a power screwdriver and make sure to set the clutch to the lowest setting for the same reason. At this point, I would highly suggest you plug everything together just to make sure everything works. You want to make sure that each and every camera works, that the DVR works, and that it records. The last thing you want to do is set everything up just to find out that one camera doesn't work. Then you have to remove all the cameras off the wall, rip up all the cabling, package everything back up, and return it back to the seller. Now you need to figure out where you're going to place your DVR and your cameras. You need to make the best use of your cameras, so placement is very important. It's always a good idea to place them near entrances and exits, high traffic areas, and locations where important valuables are located. If you're going to be placing these outside, you want them to cover the largest areas possible, and also place them high enough so they can't be reached and tampered with. As for your DVR, you don't want to place this in your main room or in an area with high traffic. You really want to keep this out of sight. If you're going to be placing this in your home, you don't want to place it in your living room. A better idea would be a den, a bedroom, or anywhere with little access. The next step after you've figured out where you want to place your cameras and your DVR is to figure out how much cabling you're going to need to connect each and every camera to your DVR. Measure the distance between the location of each camera and your DVR to calculate how long each camera cable must be. Don't forget to also calculate the distance up and down the walls where the cable will run. Most surveillance kits come with long cables that should be long enough for small homes or offices, but if you need longer cables, now is the time to buy extra cable. After you figure that out, it's finally time to mount the cameras. Place the base of the camera on the wall, and with a marker, mark each hole in the base. Then drill each mark using a drill bit that's the same thickness of the anchor you'll be using. This is so that the anchor is nice and snug. You can use any drill bit for making holes in drywall, but if you're planning on drilling into plaster, stucco, brick, or concrete, you'll need to use a bit for drilling masonry. Then place the anchors into each hole. You should be able to slide them in with your fingers. If they need a bit of help, you can tap them in with a hammer. Now place the base of the camera on the wall and line up the holes with the anchors, and then drive the screws into each anchor. If the camera isn't already installed on the base, go ahead and connect it now. Mount the back of the camera onto the screw thread and thread the camera on until it's tight. Once installed, position the camera in the best possible angle. Cameras usually have a little handle you unscrew just enough so you can position the camera where you want, then tighten the handle to lock the camera into place. After I installed this camera, I noticed that because of the way the mount works, I had installed the camera sideways. So I decided to mount it directly to the ceiling above it to fix this issue. And after your camera is mounted, the next step is to attach the video cable. Since this IP camera has power over Ethernet, I only need to attach one cable for video and power. If you're using an old analog camera, connect the yellow BNC cables. You have to line up this peg here to here, insert the cable, and twist to lock. Also connect the female and male power cables. The next step is to run the cables along the walls until they finally meet up with the DVR. Run the cables along the walls and use cable staples to attach the cables to the wall. Try to be as neat as possible for the most discreet look. And try to run as much cable as possible in the corners of the walls, along any molding, such as floor molding, and even around the door molding, so that cables aren't that noticeable. You can also run cables to the walls if needed. First, drill a hole in the wall that's just big enough to fit the cable. Before you run the cable through the wall, you'll want to use a Coax cable bushing. This is going to seal up the hole you just made, and it also makes it look a lot neater. These Coax bushings are designed for fitting wire only, and then you crimp on the connections later. We're not going to do that today. Instead, we're going to cut a slit into the bushing so we can feed the cable through with the connection and all. Then attach the bushing, feed the cable through the wall, put a small amount of caulking around the hole, and slide the bushing through, and that's it. And once all the cables have reached the DVR, go ahead and connect the camera cables into the back of the DVR exactly the same way you connected the camera cable to the camera. BNC cable to BNC connection, and Ethernet cable to Ethernet connection. Also, connect the camera power cables to the camera's power source. On multi-camera systems, instead of there being a separate power source for each individual camera, there will be one or a few power sources that connect to many cameras at a time. Here I have a power source with an adapter that connects to 4 cameras, and each camera's power cable connects to this. Now connect the monitor to the back of the DVR. Connect the mouse that's included with the DVR into the USB port on the back. Connect the power cable to the back of the DVR, and now connect the power cables from the DVR, monitor, and cameras into an outlet. Now that everything's plugged in, power on the DVR and monitor. On the first time you start up your DVR, it might ask for your basic info like your time, location, username, and password. Go ahead and enter that information right now if it asks for it. If not, you can always enter that later. So with everything on, make sure all the cameras are up and running. At this point, if there are any cameras that aren't running, the most likely cause is that they weren't wired correctly. So if this is true in your case, now's the time to double check all the connections are installed correctly, either at the camera or at the back of the DVR. If everything is up and running correctly, take a good look at each camera's position. You'll most likely find that many of your cameras could use a bit of fine-tuning in the sense of where they're angled. Maybe a camera is facing too low or too high, or needs to move over a bit. If the camera isn't where you want it to point, go back to the camera and fix its position by adjusting the base of the camera. You can also go in the settings for each camera in the DVR and adjust the video quality like contrast and brightness to make them a bit better. At this point, you're almost done. Make sure the cameras are set to record. Usually out of the box, DVRs are already set to record automatically, but you want to go into the menu system and make sure each camera is recording. You can also set when to record, whether on a schedule, always on, and also set each camera to record only when motion is detected. You can also label each channel with its own unique name, like entrance, hallway, living room, main office, etc., instead of the default channel 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So at this point, your surveillance system is finally all set up. You can now take a deep breath and give yourself a pat on the back for a job well done. There's practically nothing else you have to do, as your video recorder takes care of the rest, and it'll record 24/7. You'll have access to days, weeks, and even up to a month's worth of recordings or more, depending on the size of your hard drive. Although the hard drive will eventually get full. But there's no need to worry, and you won't have to go out and purchase a new hard drive or have to set reminders to erase the hard drive every so often. The video recorder saves your back by recording over the oldest recordings. This way you always have up-to-date recordings. So because your hard drive doesn't save your videos forever, your video recorder gives you the ability to back up an important event. To do this, you'll need a USB memory stick, and you plug that into the back of your DVR into one of the empty USB ports. From there, go into your playback settings and select the channel or channels and the time frame of the important events, and select the backup feature. From there, it will download the events into your USB stick so you can save them for as long as you'd like. You can also set up your video recorder so you can watch your cameras anywhere, on any computer and on any smartphone. This is great so you can watch your cameras on your smartphone when you're away from your video recorder. In order to do this, you'll have to connect your video recorder to a router, and you'll need an internet connection. Unfortunately, I won't show you how to do this in this video because there are just too many variables. It really boils down to what type of router you have and what model it is. On many routers, you have to open up ports and do a bunch of port forwarding mumbo jumbo. So what works for some routers might not work for other routers, and it can get extremely complicated. So your best bet is to call the manufacturer that made your video recorder and have their customer service walk you through the process. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on social media over at Facebook, Google+, and Twitter, and over at the web at toolcraze.net. I brought you guys this video for free, and if you guys want to support me, you can by purchasing the surveillance system shown in this video. You can click on the link provided in the video and also in the description down below. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.